The morning air bit through my coat, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones no matter how many layers you wear. The sky hung low, gray and swollen, as if it too bore the weight of this day. The scent of lilies stung my nose, overwhelming, almost artificial, and yet, familiar. Funerals always smelled the same. I adjusted my scarf and stood outside the chapel for a moment longer than I needed to, staring at the stone steps. My heels tapped quietly against them as I walked in, rehearsing the same fake smile I'd worn to every family event for the last decade. Normal. Be normal. Say little, smile less. Don't give them the satisfaction. We were the Whitlows, moneyed, manicured, media-ready. My grandfather had built an empire of architecture across Colorado, and we carried his name like armor or maybe like a crown too heavy for most of us to wear. He used to tell me, money reveals character faster than time ever could. I never forgot that. But what he didn't say was what happened when the money ran out, or never reached you in the first place. I came hoping for peace. Hoping maybe today would stitch something back together. I didn't realize I was walking into a burial far deeper than a man in a coffin. I stepped inside the chapel, warm but hollow in atmosphere, and scanned the pews. That's when I saw it, my name wasn't there. Everyone else had neatly printed placards. Marilee. Charles. Aunt Lydia. But not me. An usher glanced at me with sympathy that felt rehearsed. Oh, there's been a bit of a mix-up. Would you mind sitting near the exit? Just for today. No assigned seat? I asked, keeping my tone even. It's just we're full up front, he said, gesturing toward the back row near the door, like I was late or uninvited. I nodded slowly and walked to my seat, alone. From where I sat, the ceremony looked like a stage I was barred from entering. Marilee stood near the front like a senator's wife, shaking hands and dabbing at tears that probably weren't real. Her dress was tasteful. Her performance flawless. She caught my eye once, no smile, no nod, just the kind of glance someone gives a problem they'd rather not acknowledge. People stared. Not openly, but sideways, quick, quiet. One woman whispered to her husband and pointed. I caught only the end of it. Thought she'd be next to the family. You can't argue in a church, I thought. Silence is the only polite weapon I have left. It was like being photographed out of focus on purpose, still there, but barely. After the ceremony, everyone moved to the estate, a mansion of glass and steel perched above the Rockies. The kind of place that made you feel like you were both inside and on display. I kept to the edge of the crowd, hands in my coat pockets, until a hush fell. The executor, a stiff man in a tailored suit, stood by the fireplace. He held a single sheet of paper. We are here to honor Mr. Whitlow's final wishes, he began. His estate, as outlined in the most recent amendment to his will, is to be passed entirely to Marilee Voss, whom he described as the most stable and responsible steward of the family legacy. Just like that. No mention of me. Not a trinket, not a note, not even a passing line about my contributions to his firm, to his life. Marilee placed a hand over her heart. I didn't expect this. Really, she said softly. Liar. The applause that followed was hesitant, polite. It sounded like nails in a coffin. My worth being buried. I waited. Maybe there was a second page. A token gesture. Something. But the sheet went back in the envelope. I felt like I'd left my body. That room, with its designer furniture and curated grief, wasn't built for people like me. Later, I found Marilee alone in the sunroom. She poured herself a drink like it was just another Tuesday. That was unexpected, I said. She turned, unfazed. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Delara. You always made things about yourself. Why? I asked. I worked with him. I cared for him. She shrugged. He chose. Let it go. Security arrived like clockwork. One of them said, "Ms. Whitlow, we'd prefer if you left. For everyone's comfort." I looked at them, then back at her. For their comfort, huh? The glass door opened behind me. Cold wind brushed my face. As I walked out, someone muttered, "That's her? The one who used to design the firm's towers?" I didn't turn around. I walked out of the house I helped build with no more than the clothes on my back and my spine still straight. If they erased me from his story, I whispered, I'll write my own. The road twisted down the mountain. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't cry. I just drove. I remembered being 10, sitting on my grandfather's lap while he sketched buildings on napkins. He once told me, integrity outlives inheritance. Now I knew what he meant. I pulled over at a lookout, city lights stretching below like a promise I hadn't yet kept. I stood there for a while. Breathing. Not planning revenge. Not yet. Just deciding not to disappear. Sometimes you don't lose people, you just learn who they really were. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. Marilee's name. I stared at it. This isn't over. The glass of whiskey on my coffee table was only half finished, but I wasn't reaching for it. I was sitting in the dark, my coat still on, the room thick with silence and the scent of lilies clinging to my scarf like regret. My apartment was usually a refuge. Tonight, it felt like the quiet after an explosion, everything still standing, but nothing really intact. Then the phone buzzed. Marilee. I stared at the screen like it had just accused me of something. Every cell in my body wanted to decline. Let it ring out. Let her words go to voicemail and rot there. But my thumb moved before my brain could stop it. Hello? Her voice was soft. Too soft. Delara. I need to talk to you. It's urgent. Urgent. She just erased me in front of half the city. Now she wanted to talk? About what? I asked, flat. Not on the phone. Can we meet? Please. Somewhere neutral. I didn't agree because I trusted her. I agreed because curiosity and something colder made me say yes. We settled on the 24-hour diner near Union Station. Old place. No frills. Perfect for uncomfortable truths. I drove through near-empty streets, Denver lights flickering in my mirrors. When I pulled up, the neon sign of the diner buzzed overhead, half the letters dead. Fitting. Inside, I picked a booth near the back. The waitress nodded at me, knowing my face but not my name. I didn't order anything. Just waited. Marilee showed up 10 minutes late, wearing a trench coat over something expensive, like she was heading to a gala instead of groveling. She slid into the booth opposite me. I appreciate you coming, she said, as if we were on equal footing. I didn't respond. Let her squirm. There's something you need to sign. For the inheritance to clear. She pulled a folded document from her bag. It's a standard non-contest agreement. Legal formality. Grandpa didn't want drama. You mean, after the drama of cutting me out entirely? My tone was even. Cold. She blinked fast. This isn't about that. This is just business. If you sign, it speeds everything along. And if I don't? Her jaw tightened. The lawyers hold it up. It gets messy. For both of us. I picked up the document but didn't read it. What's in it for me? She hesitated. A beat too long. Peace. I leaned back. You always were a lousy liar. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm not lying. You walking away, it honors his legacy. You know that. I watched her closely. Her fingers tapped against her purse, rhythmic, nervous. Her eyes kept darting, never landing. She was bluffing. And badly. They'll release the funds by Friday, she muttered, if the paperwork's clean. There it was. Her calm had cracks now. I could almost hear them spreading. She needed me quiet. Not respected. Just silent. I remembered being 16, covering for her when she totaled Dad's car. I took the blame, lost my driving privileges for 6 months, while she cried her way out of it. History doesn't repeat. It rhymes. I'll think about it, I said. Her eyes flickered with something like relief. Thank you. I slid the paper back to her. Leave it with me. The silence stretched. She started to say something else, then changed her mind. I stood. Enjoy your evening. The air outside was colder than before. I liked it that way. Back home, I didn't turn on the lights. I went straight to the bookshelf and pulled out the journal Grandpa had given me after his first stroke. Inside the cover, I'd underlined a line he once told me, true wealth is what they'll try to steal with a smile. That damn smile. I sat on the floor and opened my old hard drive. Years of backups, project files, floor plans, emails, buried truths no one ever asked about. They forgot I designed more than buildings. I built foundations. I found the folder marked Whitlow Holdings Legacy, Final. Within it, a subfolder, Legal Only. Inside, a single sealed envelope. My name on it. They thought I was gone. Let them. Because while they were celebrating on top of the mountain, I was building leverage from the shadows. Never underestimate the quiet ones. They're listening while you're performing. I laid the sealed envelope beside the hard drive and whispered to the empty room, let's play then. I woke before the sun. No alarm. Just my body refusing to rest while my brain churned like an engine left running. The document Marilee handed me sat on my desk, untouched since I dropped it there the night before. I stared at it while my coffee brewed, the hum of the machine the only sound in the apartment. I hadn't opened it yet. Not really. I'd skimmed it, caught a few words that curled my gut, then closed it again. But now, in the early light cutting across the room, I sat down, took a breath, and started reading. Most people don't speak legal. But I'd learned. Years of working around architecture contracts taught me to spot buried knives. And this one was full of them. Full indemnity waiver. Rights of succession. Public interest immunity. All buried in language slick as oil. This wasn't a document to resolve conflict, it was a blueprint to erase me legally, financially, historically. There was no line for me to acknowledge Grandpa. No space to recognize my years building the firm. Just traps, quiet, polished, paper-thin lies meant to look like peace offerings. People hide weapons inside the words they think you're too dumb to read. I closed the file and grabbed my bag. If I was going to stay ahead, I needed a second pair of eyes. I texted Esme. She responded fast. 10:30. Her office. Downtown. We met outside her firm, a boutique legal consultancy in an old brick building near Larimer. She hugged me like a friend but looked at me like a lawyer. "Let's see it," she said, motioning toward her desk. She read silently for a few minutes. Then her eyebrows went up. Then stayed there. "She wanted you to sign this without legal counsel?" I didn't answer. Just watched her. "This isn't just a waiver. It's a surrender. There's a non-contestation clause buried in the back. And this," she tapped the appendix, "this refers to a corporate restructure. Dated 3 days after your grandfather died." I leaned forward. "He was in hospice." "Exactly." She sat back. "This gives her legal immunity if anyone, meaning you, comes forward later with evidence of wrongdoing. Whistleblowing would violate this agreement. So if I sign it, you don't just give up the money. You give up the truth." My chest was tight. Not from shock. From rage. Contained. Controlled. Deep. They didn't just want me quiet. They wanted me gone. I thanked her, took the file, and left. Outside, the air smelled of burnt espresso and cold pavement. I walked back to the car, numb and seething. By the time I reached my apartment, I wasn't angry anymore. I was sharp. I opened the drawer beside my bed and pulled out a small envelope. Grandpa's handwriting still clear. Inside, 2 passwords. One labeled Legacy. The other, Ironwood. He gave them to me months before the end. On the porch, wrapped in a blanket, he'd said, "If your name ever disappears from the story, bring it back." I hadn't touched them. Until now. I didn't use them yet, but I knew I would. Back at my desk, I looked at the document again. Marilee wanted this signed by Friday. Friday, the funds would release. If everything was clean. I picked up my phone. "Marilee," I said calmly when she answered. "I've reviewed the document. I need time." Legal review. A pause. Then her voice, sugar-dipped and shaking. "You know he didn't want lawyers involved." "That's fine," I said. "I'll be ready by Friday." She exhaled, relieved. I ended the call. Then I got to work. I emailed parts of the contract to an old contact on the corporate compliance board, someone who owed me a favor from my days managing risk assessments. I updated my will. Logged every call. Every message. Screenshotted her missed calls and her texts. I wasn't going to sign. But she wouldn't know that. And just in case she figured it out too soon, I scheduled an email. Subject line, "If anything happens to me." I sat at my desk just after dawn, the Denver skyline stretching through the window like a reminder of how far I'd come and how far I still needed to go. Papers lay scattered across the surface, meeting notes, an undated contract, and the faint outline of a clause I had overlooked. My fingers hovered over a highlighted line, "Except those assets listed in Schedule B shall remain in original title until condition fulfilled." I frowned. A contract shouldn't spring surprises if you drafted it. But this one did. Something wasn't right. They assumed I hadn't read the details. They assumed I'd sign quietly. I pressed the line again and realized I wasn't the only party listed. Hidden. I retrieved the USB drive labeled Ironwood Legacy from the safe my grandfather kept. Its existence quiet until now, its purpose unknown until now. I sat for a moment and whispered to myself, "They think I'm unaware. But being aware is the first step forward. I plugged in the drive, let the files upload, and settled into the role I was long overdue to embrace, investigator. Later that afternoon I met with Gideon Presley at a quiet library cafe downtown. My old friend, my early college days confidant, now a lawyer whose tone could carry weight even when just sipping coffee. He looked surprised when I handed him the contract. "It's odd the clause left those still under Delara's name in the heirloom trust," he murmured. I watched his face change, carefully. His eyes admitted it before his mouth caught up. "Legally it's standard," he said, but the pause told me otherwise. "Thank you for noticing." "I'll follow up," I replied, voice calm, posture steady. Inside, I felt the storm building. Leverage. I sensed it and I embraced it. I left the cafe with certainty I had not felt since the day I sat back and let them rewrite my place at the table. For the first time, I was writing from the margins. The sun was low when I stepped into City Park. Goose honks echoed across the lake, children ran past, and joggers strobed by, all oblivious to the subtle war raging in my mind. I glanced down at my phone. A message from Esme, "Check the county recorder. Parcel 157086662 still in Whitlow name." I pulled up the map. Sure enough. A small plot of land, still recorded in my family name, but untouched, ignored. Someone had not cleared it. Or someone chose not to. I closed my eyes for a moment. I found a smile I didn't bother hiding. Sometimes power is given by omission, I told myself. I photographed the record with my phone and saved it. Small victory. Quiet but potent. Back at my apartment later that evening, I drafted 3 emails, one to Esme with questions, one to my compliance contact alerting him of possible fraud involving Marilee's team, and one to Marilee herself, "I'll talk Friday." Short. Direct. No room for manipulation. Then I opened the journal Grandpa had left me. The page I found had his script looping back to words I once dismissed. "I heard you when you left me the word Ironwood." I traced the phrase with my finger. I inhaled steadily. I stepped onto my balcony, city lights thrumming below, the USB drive cool in my hand. Cold. Real. I whispered into the night, "Game on." When I walked into the old Whitlow firm building midday, the atmosphere greeted me with silent expectation. The portraits of past leaders hung along the corridor, men in dark suits, strong faces, arms crossed. I paused in front of one, touched the edge of the frame, and felt their legacy against my palm. The firm had shifted beneath my feet, but the building still remembered me. A junior assistant handed me a visitor badge without eye contact. I entered the glass-walled conference room where Marilee already sat, calm and composed. Cameras were muted. Phones were out of sight. A copy of the agreement lay on the table. The message hung, "We expect decorum." I breathed slowly, letting the tension settle. They always disguise war as civility when it's waged on women. I sat down, crossed my legs, unwrapping the deepest strategy I've ever had to deploy. Marilee stood when I walked in. Her posture perfect. Her smile fixed. She carried an envelope. Her voice even, "Delara. I appreciate you coming." "Thanks for the invitation," I answered, voice steady. She spoke of reconciliation, of honoring Grandpa's vision, of family unity. I nodded, watched her eyes. They didn't hold mine. Instead they drifted to the door, the assistant, the skyline beyond. "I read everything," I said at last. "You've built a fortress." Her jaw tightened. "It's protection, Delara. We're preventing a mess." "How many filings did you skip to call this a fix?" I asked. She unfolded her mask just a little. Don't make this difficult. You won't win. I sat forward. If I sign, you erase me. If I don't, you erase yourself. Her silence thundered. She slid the envelope across the table. Inside, screenshots, edited conversations, a forged resignation letter from years back. You think I came unprepared? She whispered. These go to the board. The media. I felt heat rise, but held it. I raised my phone and slid the property title document across. You forgot this. If we go nuclear, we both burn. She flinched. Just so slightly. But enough. I stood, gathered my coat. You've always bet I wouldn't speak. This time, bet against that. I stepped out of the building, not running, not shaken, just unbroken. I called Esme immediately. Get ready. She blinked. They call it peace when we sit quietly. But I've learned, silence isn't peace. It's surrender. That night my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. You should have signed. Clock's ticking. I stared at the screen and closed my eyes. I heard the ticking. I walked into the room where the ceremony was about to begin. The community center, our family's new flagship project, stood tall behind the boardroom windows. Light glinted off glass walls and steel beams. 2 hours until ribbon cutting. Guests seated. Local press present. City council members lined up. I felt my badge press against my coat. My name was absent from every list. Marilee's name gleamed on the presenter board. I took a seat near the back, notebook and tablet in hand, pretending to observe statistics. In truth, I measured every smile, every handshake, every camera angle. Recognition is not given, it's seized. I watched the legacy I helped build being presented as someone else's victory. Resentment came creeping in. My pulse slowed, mine sharpened. This moment mattered far beyond optics, it signaled every value I ever upheld was on the line. When Marilee stepped up to the podium, she spoke of a dream I inherited and carried forward. Applause followed. My hands tightened around the tablet. I recorded the speech. The words I said years ago, the midnight sketches, the contract meetings, the approvals, I watched them slide into her narrative. My assistant caught my glance and passed me the original file dates quietly. It said Delara Whitlow, lead architect, but public credit claimed adapted by Marilee Voss. I stood from the back row as if lifting the weight of that miscrediting off my chest. The way the room clapped, it wasn't for me. It was a seal. I pressed record on the phone, my voice steady in my head, my work was stolen, silken and public. I walked off the staged applause and found a quiet corridor. The betrayal hit like frozen rain. I didn't shout. I didn't storm. I simply ordered coffee in the lobby and waited. While the crowd cheered, I planned the undoing. My anger felt heavy, but controlled. I wasn't the victim I'd been led to play. Late that evening, I gathered in a small conference room with Esme and Gideon. The walls were beige, fluorescent lights hummed. They sat across from me. We spread out the contracts, the blueprints, the meeting footage. Gideon said quietly, legally, the credit is yours, but the public record says otherwise. I tapped a document on the table. This shows I presented the redevelopment concept before Marilee was even appointed as executor. Esme nodded silently. The edges of a strategy formed, call to public board, reveal false attribution, bring transparency. The room grew calmer as the plan solidified. I left the building at dusk, the sky bruised purple, and walked to the rooftop terrace. Denver lights stretched like tiny beacons beneath me. Grandpa's words echoed, "Integrity outlasts recognition." I breathed in that air and exhaled resolve. The monument might fall, his trophy center, their narrative, but the truth would rise. When the boardroom reconvened the next morning, I stood. The windows showed the campus below and the Rockies beyond. Marilee sat poised, confident. The chairman asked, "Ms. Whitlow, would you like to speak?" I advanced to the podium and projected slides, original blueprints, timestamps, Delara Whitlow, lead designer cards. Silence filled the room. Cameras clicked. Marilee's face shifted, submission, panic, then mask. I said clear and calm, "I didn't ask for your spotlight, I just asked to be seen." The board members leaned forward, the press paused. The weight of every moment I held in silence landed all at once. I walked away as control returned to me. Credentials, acknowledgement, visibility, everything they tried to erase, I reclaimed. Outside the boardroom, Marilee caught me in the corridor. She leaned in, "You just made yourself a target." My response was soft, but firm, "I already was. Now you just aired the truth." I walked on, ascending to the terrace again. City lights quivered below. I closed my eyes briefly, memorizing the skyline. Grandpa's metaphor lived in that view. Those lights weren't for him, or for them, they were reminders of what I'd built and what I would. Revenge is hollow, correction is powerful. I held the USB drive in my pocket. I didn't need to use it yet. The truth had wings. That night I opened my laptop to an email subject line, "Leaks coming." Check inside. A banking trail attachment opened. Marilee to a shell company overseas. My jaw clenched, but my mind raced. She struck back, faster than I anticipated. The game had changed. The monument had fallen, but now the war shifted. Walking into the venue felt like stepping onto a stage someone else built for me. The gala was under a tent of glass and steel, lights blaring, music soft but steady, and the chatter of patrons mixing with the clink of wine glasses. I stood near the entrance, coat over my arm, phone tucked away but ready. I used to cringe at this sort of event, now I studied it. Cameras hovered like vultures. The jazz band played warmth, but the air between guests crackled. I reminded myself, they throw parties to hide their skirmishes. I tightened my grip on the strap of my purse and paused for a breath. I was in enemy territory, yes, but I wasn't lost. I was preparing. Midway through the evening, I felt the phone buzz in my pocket. I didn't check it immediately, the band's saxophone solo filled the room and the guests shifted toward the stage. Only when the applause faded did I slip away and glance. A message from Esme, video live in 5. Behind the stage, a massive screen lit up. The lights dimmed a notch. Then, Corwin Hargreaves appeared in grainy video, speaking quietly to a man whose face I didn't know, shaking hands, sliding papers across a table. The name Hargreaves and Associates flickered on the screen. Gasps swept across the room. Marilee froze mid-smile. I raised my glass slowly, to transparency, I said to no one in particular. The room turned. The clerk at the bar looked my way. Reporters shifted. My assistant glanced at me, wide-eyed, and nodded. This wasn't theater anymore. It was reckoning. The public theft, the silent pushdown, the erased work, all of it came roaring back. I stood there in calm, while inside a storm pressed forward. Their narrative cracked. Mine broke free. Later that night, I moved to a balcony lounge high above the venue, bright city lights stretching out below. I met with Gideon. He sipped his drink and didn't speak at first. Then my phone buzzed again. Text from Marilee, you just made yourself a target. I showed Gideon the screen. He cleared his throat. They're going operational. Leaks, lawsuits, your name in headlines. I felt the blood drain a little. Fear. But I caught it. I guided it. I replied with one word, then bring it. I realized this wasn't about legacy anymore, it was war. A war I didn't ask for but decided to fight. Our talks spun out plans, rollback strategies, public disclosures. I felt empowered. I felt alive. The fear wasn't gone, but it was mine. I leaned on the railing and watched the world below. My silhouette sharp against the night sky. The next morning I went to my grandfather's safe deposit box. Inside, the tiny envelope labeled Whitlow Proof. I carried it carefully back to my apartment. I copied files from the USB drive. Contract records. Email chains. Meeting footage. Every piece of truth I held tight. I scheduled drafts of emails, set trigger releases, alerted contacts I trusted. I practiced the speech I'd give tomorrow to the board, crisp, factual, undeniable. I remembered what Grandpa once said, victory is what happens when you stay silent until the right moment to speak. I exhaled quietly. This was that moment. I tucked the USB into my jacket and left the apartment into the pre-dawn light, resolute. That evening, my phone lit up with a breaking news alert, Whitlow Corporation announces internal audit after corruption allegations. I let the message resting there. I watched the city glow through my window, feeling the shift in tilt. The strike back had started. Morning sunlight filtered through the boardroom windows, casting long shadows across the table where our little group assembled, Esme, Gideon, and I. I felt poised, deliberate. Marilee sat directly across, flanked by her executive team in their dark suits. The tension was almost tangible. I took a deep breath and began. On the screen behind me flickered a video clip of my grandfather, smiling, saying the exact words he meant, with me in his arms, Delara Whitlow will lead our legacy. The silence crushed the murmurs in the room. Marilee's team shifted. Their calm facade broke. I watched it happen. Then Gideon stood and laid out the contract I had pulled from the safe, the hidden clause, the dates, the fingerprints of deceit. Chairs creaked, cameras clicked. I held the floor and said simply, the record shows not what you say, but what you prove. I knew then the moment of truth had come. By late afternoon I stood at the podium of the Denver corporate headquarters press room, lights glaring, microphones ready. I opened with Grandpa's motto, integrity outlasts recognition. I dropped the evidence, ownership records, video timestamp files, contract PDFs, all live. Reporters leaned in. Lines snapped open. Marilee stood behind me, expression locked. I stepped forward, you will see the truth. Not my request. My proof. Then Esme hit upload on the live feed. The documents poured publicly. The world watched. The dynamic snapped. It wasn't vengeance, it was justice. The relief I felt landed like rain after a drought. I wasn't smiling broadly, I was steady. Because I knew the win wasn't mine alone, it was our legacy restored. In the hours that followed, the fallout began. My phone buzzed endlessly, news alerts, social media threads trending Whitlow scandal, Marilee Voss exposed. I didn't watch all of it. I just watched Marilee retreat, her network eroding like a shoreline in winter. Then I received a single text from Grandpa's old assistant, he always believed you'd light the room. I paused on the balcony, the crisp evening air clearing the remainder of doubt. Freedom tasted different when the cage wasn't just open, it had been dismantled. I stood there quietly. I let the night hum around me. I didn't claim victory, just accepted it. Then the last scene, I opened Grandpa's journal on the rooftop. The line I found was simple: if the story erases you, tell it again. And I wrote one more email to Marilee: I'm building. You're remembering. I shut the laptop. The wind touched my cheek. The city lights glowed. I knew this was only the beginning. A week had passed since the press conference. The air felt different. I could hear the morning birds clearer, or maybe my mind was just finally quiet enough to notice them. My kitchen was still modest. Same chipped mug. Same window letting in that patch of warm light that never quite reached the corners. But this morning, it felt like it reached me. I poured coffee without checking my phone. No buzzing headlines, no legal emails. Just a folded letter on the counter, heavy envelope, old school seal. I didn't open it right away. I let the steam from the cup touch my face. For the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for anything. I was just still. I read the letter around noon. Sat on the couch, sunlight across my knees. My grandfather had left behind more than I'd expected. The foundation he'd built in secret, a $50 million charity fund in his name, was meant for me to run. No loopholes. No oversight from Marilee or the board. Just mine. There was a note. In his handwriting, shaky but deliberate: you weren't my heir. You were my hope. I let that sit in my chest a while. Not because I didn't believe it, but because I did. It made me feel something I hadn't let myself feel in years: trusted. I whispered, not to anyone, just to the space around me, "Thank you for seeing me even when I couldn't." That afternoon I drove to the house I grew up in. No one lived there now. Paint chipped. Mail slot taped over. The porch creaked the same way it always had. I didn't go in. I just stood there, fingers brushing the railing. I pulled out my phone and called Esme. "I'm ready," I told her. "But not to rebuild what was. I want to build what could be." That night, I sent a quiet donation to the local women's shelter. In Marilee's name. No press release. No acknowledgement. Just a line in the ledger that would never trace back to me. As I sat in the car before heading home, a group of kids biked past, laughing so loud it startled me into a smile. One of them waved. I waved back. Maybe that's where healing starts, where belief still exists. The next morning, I hiked the trail behind the old corporate HQ. The view wasn't dramatic, but it was familiar. I brought Grandpa's journal. Flipped it open. Scribbled something short under his final line. Some stories don't end. They echo. And in those echoes, we build. A girl sat on a bench a few feet away, shoulders hunched, staring off like she was trying to figure out if she should run or stay. I walked over, not too close. Just enough to be heard. "Hi," I said softly. "My name's Delara. You look like someone I used to be."